Well, that should say it all. The project this morning has been making some sugar cakes put on the bees because they are all light. I do have some honey I pulled off before some varroa treatments in the summer that I've added back to some of the hives, but for the most part the hives are light. So here in the Willamette Valley we're very wet, and now we've cooled off enough that feeding liquid sugar syrup is not so good for the bees. They can't dehydrate it and get it dry enough. Once they get to the point they can't dry it any further, if it's not dry enough, it can start to ferment. They can eat a little bit of that. Once it ferments too much, it's not so good for them. They're trying to stay warm, and as anybody who's an outdoorsman and a drinker knows, alcohol and cold weather don't go good together. So we want to eliminate that and allow them to dry out what they can. So I put together this idea, and it's probably a mistake because most of my ideas are the first time around, but I'm putting just enough moisture in the sugar to get it to stick together and get the air out, and I'm putting them in wax paper containers so that hopefully there won't be any dripping on the bees from it if it's above them. And as they need it, they can come up and get some, and it'll liquefy from their breathing. But with just a few holes in it, they can open it up if they need it and get more, or the small droplets that come out will be so condensed, so full of sugar that if they do fall out and land on a bee, the others are going to clean it off quickly. So some of them that I did, I put 1 cup of pollen sub into 8 cups of sugar, so there's a slight amount of pollen. They do raise brood through the winter, and I want them to have something to feed that without having enough to really stimulate major brood growth, but also not to be consuming all of the pollen that they've put in their frames and have that ready for spring. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting about a teaspoon or a little more than a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar in the water, adding a little bit of pink salt because they are girls and they like pink. The apple cider vinegar is supposed to help with the stomach issues in the winter time when they can't get out like they should. So I start with the water, and I get some in there. I'm not going to put it all in because I'm at the bottom of my sugar also. I'm going to get back mixing in a slurry. Then I start adding the sugar. Thank goodness I didn't get all the ants killed in the house this year. They can come in and finish cleaning this up for me. I want to add sugar till it's about all that it can take and still be wet. We'll let that mix for a little bit and we'll get the rest of it in there. Then I've got a small container here that I put the wax paper in, and with it being wet, if you just tamp it and jitter it, you'll push all the air out and get it pushed into the corners and get it about as dense as you can get it. It's almost in a liquid form. As long as you're shaking it, it liquefies to get down in there. Some of the batches I did were a little wetter than I wanted them, and I just added some dry sugar to the top and shook it till it went in. And then I'm pulling it out of there and wrapping them up, and this is what we end up with. So hopefully this will help get the poor bees through. We'll see. I want to put some of my real weak ones into the greenhouse. I have some queens that just started laying in June, and they're not built up near enough to make it outside yet. They were the last of my queen rearing program. So I'm going to get them in the greenhouse. I'm going to put some feed out for them and some pollen out, so when they can fly, they've got something to eat. It'll keep the wind and the rain off of them. I also have broccoli that's blooming in the greenhouse, so they'll have flowers to get to, and just see if they make it. I know for sure they won't make it if they're outside, so we'll throw a few in there for another experiment, because by God, that's what life is just one big experiment, isn't it? So, all right, well, hope you enjoyed it.